Well, you know summer has arrived when you get no Maz on a Friday night on the Baseball Hour. Week 2 of the Mazless Friday experience. No Milliken this week. He's sitting on a beach somewhere, probably shirtless, waiting for Jarren Duran to hit a triple. Nipples for triples. The great Tyler Milliken moment. What do you think he's going to do if Duran makes the All-Star game? I shudder to think what he might do. We might have a real OnlyFans situation with Tyler Milliken, which is everything the people want. So it's me, Matt McCarthy. Hi, how you doing? 617-779-0985. Jimmy Stewart's here to yell at me. Maybe we'll get into another argument about Andrew Bailey tonight. We generally seem to do that.
You mean the next manager of the Boston Red Sox, Andrew Bailey?
Boy, aren't you going to miss Alex Cora, Jimmy? Aren't you going to miss him? The comments that he made this week, which are so compelling, so interesting, so fun. Isn't baseball supposed to be fun? Sports talk supposed to be fun?
Yeah, so I don't have to hear about pitch shape and spin rate.
Analytics and angles, and thank God Milliken's not here. I don't have to hear about somebody's XWO bacon tonight.
What is that called? Trigonometry?
It's a real stat. Look it up. XWO bacon, expected weighted on base percentage plus average.
I'm into crispy
contact.
bacon.
That's a terrible take. Floppy bacon all the way.
Really?
Little undercooked. Bad take. Oh, you cook all the flavor out of it? What, Jimmy, if you order a steak, you're going to say, yeah, I want that well done?
No, I want a medium.
Yeah, so you order your bacon, essentially.
But I want my bacon with some crisp.
Medium or medium
I'm
rare.
not charbroiling it.
I mean, I think crispy bacon is charbroiling.
No, if you do it right.
I don't think you can do that right. Bad take. No such thing as a bad take. That's a bad take right there. I'm not going to stand for that. Not on the Baseball Hour. No siree. You know what?
The bacon conversation might get us to 7 o'clock.
We might get there, man. It's a Friday night. But people want to talk
this
about
or that.
People,
medium, undercooked bacon or crispy bacon.
Jimmy, I'm putting that one in the holster for a nice All-Star Week show with Felger, because I believe I'm doing All-Star Week with Felger. I'm sure he'll greatly appreciate bacon talk, because Felger's going to want to come in on the Wednesday after Major League All-Star game and talk about bacon. I'm sure
this or that, hamburgers or hot dogs.
Call Tim McCone with that. And Zolak and Bertrand.
We can do a Bob Lobel, Steve Burton lightning round of yes or no.
I'm all for the lightning round.
Long-time listeners of sports radio will get that reference.
And you better believe, I'm on Tuesday morning, I'm in with Holly. And you better believe, Jimmy, we're doing a lightning round. The creator of the lightning round, Michael Holly, do it in his honor.
I hope it'll be sponsored by Guess Jeans.
We can make that happen. Somebody get the sales team on it.
Holly will get that joke, and like 3 listeners just got it.
Old school, man. Old school. Phone lines open at 617-779-0985. I am not going to tolerate Jimmy Stewart's bacon takes, nor will I tolerate Xander Bogaerts slander on the program tonight. This weekend would have been all about the Xander Bogaerts story. It would have been all about the angle on Bogaerts and the Red Sox moving on from him, but he's hurt, which robs us of some of that. He's not going to play. Not to mention, too, he moved to second base at the beginning of this year, then got hurt. $280 million, 11 years. It is a terrible contract for the Padres. Terrible. One of the worst in baseball. You could argue the worst in baseball. So tonight is a good night to look back on, frankly, 2 years of discussion, at least a year of discussion that we had on the Baseball Hour, which was all centering around Xander Bogaerts and letting him walk, and the decision the Red Sox were clearly making in 2022 leading up to his departure at the end of the 2022 season. And they did that in favor of Trevor Story. They signed Trevor Story to play second base, mind you, in the spring of 2022, gave him $140 million. Sox probably could have gotten Bogaerts for 160, maybe 180 million that offseason. They offered him 90. Don't forget that. They could have had him. They chose. They didn't want him. He went to the market, ended up being the best thing that's ever happened to Xander Bogaerts. He got overpaid. Good for him. Bad for the Padres. Good for Xander Bogaerts. But let's not forget that Xander Bogaerts has been better for the San Diego Padres, and he hasn't been good for them. But he's been better for the Padres than Trevor Story has been for the Red Sox. That's a fact. It's not an opinion. It is undeniable. So this weekend, to me, also is a perfect reminder of the incredible misstep this franchise made with Trevor Story and what it means for them moving forward. It's kind of like an out of sight, out of mind thing. You almost forget about Trevor Story right now. He has 3 years and $90 million remaining on his contract.
Ugh.
It's terrible. He hasn't played since he came here. He's been hurt the whole time. And when he actually has played, he has sucked. He's been terrible. Take a guess as to what Trevor Story's OPS is in Boston, Jimmy.
Is it 551?
That's a little higher than that. 681. 681. Guy couldn't hit a softball off a tee if he tried. It's a problem for the Red Sox moving forward. His presence, or if you want to even call it that, because he doesn't play, is likely going to force the Red Sox to trade multiple players. We talked about this a little bit on Felger and Maz, but the roster crunch the Red Sox have coming in the middle infield. Story's an issue. He's an issue. You're paying him 3 years at $90 million. You're obviously not going to be able to unload that contract. Nobody's going to want a guy who hasn't hit, can't stay on the field, and hasn't been a good baseball player for the last 3 years. Nobody's going to want that. So as a result, where's Marcelo Meyer going to play? Maybe you move Story to second. You moving Meyer to second? I don't know. David Hamilton's been great this year. Where's David Hamilton going to play next year? You can say, hey, McCarthy is overrated, cash in. Sure, that's fine. You have Grissom, you have Valdez, you have York. You have a really crowded middle infield. You can only play 2 of them. Trevor Story's a problem, and this all could have been avoided. Everybody thinks the Bogaerts deal sucks in San Diego, and it does. Somehow, some way, though, the Story signing sucks more. One of the worst signings in team history. And it's just another example of a misstep that this team has made. Don Orsillo's in town this weekend, isn't he? San Diego
He
Padres.
should be. He's the voice of the San Diego Padres.
Misstep. This weekend is a reminder, and things are going well for the Red Sox right now, but it's also, there's that undercurrent of, wow, you guys really screwed that up, right? I mean, the Bogaerts thing reminds you of the Lester misstep, which was obviously, the beginning of the end for Larry Lucchino. And the Red Sox were chasing that for years. They're going to be chasing the mistake they made on Betts and Bogaerts for a long time. Because it was a mistake. It was. Would you rather have Xander Bogaerts at 6 for 160 or Trevor Story at 6 for 140? It's not even close. Let's say it's even 6 for 180 for Bogaerts. It's not even close. Best thing that ever happened to the guy, Red Sox insulting him, walks out the door, hits free agency, and all of a sudden the Padres get crazy and give him 11 and 280. He never would have gotten that, never would have pursued it, never would have even thought it was possible. So good for him. It worked out for him, but it didn't work out for the Red Sox. How's that Red Sox broadcast, by the way? Is it compelling? Is it interesting?
No.
I don't think so either. And it's a minor thing, like it's the broadcaster, don't get me wrong, but again, it's what are you giving to the fans?
But your team broadcaster is your number one salesman across all platforms. Is Dave O'Brien that? Should Dave O'Brien be selling your product? He's humorless. He's borderline humorless. He's so much better when he was on the radio. Orsillo could play around with Eck. He could play around with Remy. And those 2 guys actually liked Orsillo. I don't know necessarily that they like Dave O'Brien, as evidence is the fact that Eck retired.
Broadcast has taken a hit. There's no doubt about it in the last 10 years. You go from Orsillo and Remy, Orsillo and Eck, to what they're doing now. In fact, I think it's a small reason why people aren't as interested in the Red Sox as they once were. I mean, obviously the product on the field hasn't been great, but it's just another little reminder. There have been a lot of missteps that this franchise has made. And what do you do about it moving forward? Are you going to just kind of keep going down this path? Are you going to not invest? Is the franchise going to remain soulless? Xander Bogaerts, say what you will about him, everybody in this town knew him. Say what you will. Red Sox had some good years. Red Sox had some bad years with Orsillo in the broadcast booth. Was it a compelling broadcast even in 2014 and 2015 when the Red Sox sucked? What are they giving you? What is this team giving you? And that gets into the Cora comments this week, and that gets into the Craig Breslow comments this week. Can you give me something? Can you give me a reason to believe? Can you give me a reason to get excited? Can you give me something I can connect with? Bogaerts was a connectable figure. Mookie Betts, a connectable figure. The broadcaster, the play-by-play guy, Don Orsillo, a connectable figure.
You know what they're showing right now on MLB Network? They're showing the pizza throw.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? What a moment.
And all the commentators on the desk for MLB Network are laughing about it, and they're watching it, and they're doing it in slow-mo. It's tremendous.
I want to be entertained, Jimmy. I want to be entertained, and there are a million different ways that we, as baseball fans, can be entertained. Put a good team on the field. Try. Right now, the Red Sox are putting a good team on the field. And I can't watch the game because it's on Apple TV tonight. Can you imagine? This happened last year, too.
Was it Red Sox Yankees?
It's a conspiracy.
Or was it Red Sox Dodgers?
Red Sox Dodgers. Mookie Betts returned to Fenway Park. Apple TV. Red Sox Padres. Apple TV. They thought Bogaerts was going to play. Huh. How dirty is that? How dirty is that? Just a little snivel. Oh, God. They can't even handle it. They don't even want to put it on Nesson tonight. And they don't have to worry about it, but they didn't want to put it on Nesson. They didn't want Xander Bogaerts' return on Nesson. They were asking the question earlier today on Zolak and Bertrand about your favorite return from a former player. One of the ones that came to my mind immediately was the ovation that Nomar Garciaparra got when he came back. Jimmy, did you just react negatively to that?
Ugh. I hate Nomar.
Well, that's a personal thing.
It should have been John Valentin's spot at shortstop. Move Nomar somewhere else.
That's a young Jimmy Stewart take. Valentin couldn't stay healthy, Jimmy. I love Valentin as much as the next guy. He couldn't stay healthy. Wow.
Nomar ended up not staying healthy either, by the way.
Well, I mean, yeah, there was that. But wow, that was
like, that SI Kelvar,
Jimmy,
by the way.
Jimmy, how old were you? Is that like 10 years old? Have you been holding that take in forever? That was like personal. That was like me if you like called in and said, hey, McCarthy, Mo Vaughn signed with the Angels. Like, oh, don't hurt me like that. I
loved Mo Vaughn.
I just hurt you, man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to unintentionally do that, but they got it right.
All I know is that Nomar was a high draft pick who could only hit doubles, and then he gets to the major leagues and he's popping, 3 homer games, 30 home runs, SI cover? Like, come on.
I will not tolerate this Nomar slander.
His defense got suckier as he got bigger.
The same way that I will not tolerate any Xander Bogaerts slander on this program tonight.
John Valentin was a good enough teammate where he's like, here, Nomar, have the spot. You don't deserve it, but I'll play third, I'll play second, I'll play somewhere else.
Bogaerts was a great teammate. He was the leader of this team. And you didn't value that, and you moved on. And listen, you can say that they made the right decision to move on from Xander Bogaerts. How about the guy they brought in to replace him? How's that working out for you?
Not great.
No, not great. In fact, he's been worse in Boston than Bogaerts has been in San Diego. And Bogaerts has one of the worst contracts in baseball.
Didn't Bogaerts make an all-star team with San Diego?
He had a really good second half of last year.
Oh, no, he didn't. I'm sorry. But
he had a good year.
285 with a 790 OPS. What did Trevor Story do last year?
Well, he didn't play.
Oh.
Right, because he was hurt. Bogaerts is hurt this year, but this is the first time he's basically ever been hurt. Bogaerts has played full seasons his entire career. Trevor Story can't get on the field. And not only can he not get on the field, he's about to limit what you are capable of doing in the middle infield for years to come. When Bogaerts gets healthy, he'll come back and he'll perform. It might be a 790 OPS, but he'll belong on the field. Trevor Story has not belonged in a batter's box since he signed in Boston, and that's a fact. 617-779-0985. A look back at the Bogaerts thing, how it ties into what they're doing moving forward. The analytics, the numbers, should they buy? Cora wants them to. Breslow does not want them to, apparently. We'll see. Is there some room there? Is there some opportunity for Craig Breslow to grow in that position, to change his mind? I think he indicated something to you about that yesterday. We'll get into all of that in your calls next. It's McCarthy in for Maz on the Baseball Hour.
This is the Baseball Hour.
2-1 pitch. Bogaerts sends a drive to center field and deep. Gardner turns around and watches it fly! The 6th home run allowed by Gerrit Cole at Fenway Park this year in less than 17 innings.
Bogaerts, who ended the season cold, gets red hot. And to your point, Matt, the season's over. New season, new pitch, and a new start here for the Red Sox.
Maybe the defining Xander Bogaerts moment in a Red Sox uniform. His home run in the wild card game off Gerrit Cole, which was one of the loudest I've heard Fenway Park in recent years. Doesn't that feel like it was a long time ago? It's only 2.5 years ago. October of 2021. Feels like forever ago. This weekend would have been about the Bogaerts thing. He's hurt, but I still think it is. I mean, it's everything pregame. I know Bogaerts spoke. We'll hear from him in a little bit on the Baseball Hour with McCarthy and from Maz. I did see this from Alex Spear. Posted a picture of Sam Kennedy, your guy, Stu, and Bogaerts exchanging a hug. Spear also adds this. Kennedy met with Bogaerts and Devers in a Fenway suite after the 2022 season, at which time Bogaerts thought he'd end up re-signing. Bogaerts wanted to come back here. I said it all along. He wanted to come back here. Feels a little newsworthy. I saw you perk up back there, Jimmy.
I want to know the follow-up as to why it didn't happen.
Well, because he went to the market and San Diego got crazy and they offered him 11 for $280.
But if Sam met with Devers and Bogaerts felt like he was coming back, what am I missing here?
Well, what you're missing is that Bogaerts went to the market and he was blown away by San Diego and they weren't willing to go that far. The Red Sox, and nobody, by the way, was expecting that Bogaerts was going to get 11 for $280. You know, the discussion at that point is whether Bogaerts would get somewhere, and I remember this because I was in the weeds on it. Bogaerts is probably going to be about a 200 to maybe 220 player, maybe. And San Diego came in at 11 for $280, and the Red Sox weren't going there. Remember Chaim Bloom was like crying in the Delta suite and all that? They thought they were getting him back, but they messed around and they signed Trevor Story instead. That spring, they gave Xander Bogaerts his money to Trevor Story. And look at where they're at. Trevor Story, still employed here, by the way, even though he's barely played for the Red Sox. 3 years, $90 million. $90 million they owe that bum over the next 3 years. He sucks. Again, not that Bogaerts had a great year one in San Diego and he's hurt now. A little bit more of a shoulder injury. He'll be back and he'll be effective. Will Trevor Story be that? I'm not convinced. Doug in Boston on Trevor Story. Hi, Doug. That's very relaxing. Yeah, I'm feeling good about that. Doug, I'm going to put you on hold because you put me on hold. I feel like that's me reciprocating. Always reciprocate in life. There's some advice for you. Ferd in Worcester. Hey, Ferd.
How you doing, Matt and Jimmy? Good evening.
Good to have you.
I want to talk about the Bogaerts. I think the Red Sox were afraid of the term and the total number, and instead of that, they overpaid for Trevor Story, who's not even 1/4 of the player that Bogaerts is. I'll let you discuss. Have a good weekend.
They were concerned about the term and the total value of the contract at the end. He wasn't getting 11 for $280 here. Not going to happen. But they could have gotten him for $6 and, $160 to $200, whatever that ultimately ended up looking like, which never, ever was going to be too much for the Red Sox. At the time, they decided it was too much because I don't think they valued Bogaerts as a player. I think that was obvious. Bogaerts is not an analytics darling. Bloom, I don't think was, going to hand out, $200 million to him. But you read Sam Kennedy, it sounds like Kennedy got involved and ownership got involved and they thought they were going to bring Bogaerts back. It's newsworthy. Kennedy met with Bogaerts and Devers in a Fenway suite after the 2022 season, at which time Bogaerts thought he'd end up re-signing. We didn't know that before. But remember at the time, Jimmy, it kind of felt like those sides were maybe getting closer, and then all of a sudden that news came out about 11
Was the
for
reporting
$280.
from like McAdam and Spear and Pete Abe all about like the Red Sox feel really good about this?
Yes. And I think what you're learning there, by Bogaerts saying he thought he was coming back, is that all of it was true. They probably did think they were close, and then San Diego came in and blew them away. But that's what happens when you let players go to the market. Somebody else comes in with a deal that you don't want to match that is ultimately, not worth what that player's worth. Trevor Story was not a $140 million baseball player, but he was on the open market. The Red Sox pounced. That didn't work for him. Doug in Boston again. That didn't work out so well again with Doug there. I'm going to let Doug go on that. Open up his line for somebody at 617-779-0985. So where do you go from here? Where do you go from here? This gets into Alex Cora's comments and Craig Breslow's latest comments, which I want to talk about. Breslow yesterday on Greg Hill, responding to Cora. He said, quote, "Look, I think we're a month away from the deadline. I certainly understand the line of questioning, but I think what we focus on right now is the fact that we've got a number of players who are playing incredibly well, who are making progress, who are guys like Duran and Devers and Wong and Houck, who should be all-stars." Nowhere in there, and I mean nowhere, does he say, yeah, we think this team is good enough to invest in, which is more of the same. Kind of brings you back to those moments 2 years ago where, they said, all these kind of nice lukewarm things about Xander Bogaerts, but it was obvious that they weren't interested in bringing him back. I will say there was one moment in yesterday's conversation with Craig Breslow where I felt that he did allow for the fact that maybe things could change over the course of the next month, and maybe things might be different, and he might approach things differently than Bloom did at the last couple of deadlines. He was asked about the Red Sox approach at the last few deadlines, where the Red Sox didn't, as we know, invest. They did some buying and some selling, and they just kind of middled everything. Here's what Breslow had to say. Quote, "Obviously, I wasn't here in the past, but I do think there are lessons to be learned from other teams, from how other teams have behaved around the deadline. It's really difficult to try to balance trying to add while also trying to move some guys. And obviously, when you try to choose both, you end up with neither. I think the most important thing we can do over the next month is to kind of pick a lane, commit to it, understand that there are costs to either decision, but bank ourselves to what is best for the Boston Red Sox." Unquote. The picking the lane thing, that's big. That's big. Again, as we learned tonight, the Red Sox kind of tried to middle it with Bogaerts. Oh, no, we don't want you. Here's 4 for 90 in spring training. But at the end of the year, when Sam Kennedy meets with him in the Fenway Suite, they think the deal is done, and ultimately it isn't. They middled it. They didn't commit to something one way or another, and they ultimately ended up losing the player and ending up with a worse player as a result in Trevor Story. At least Craig Breslow, and I'll give him credit for this, at least he does not sound like a general manager who wants to buy and sell at this deadline. Doesn't sound to me like he's committed to buying, which to me is problematic. Talked about it a lot today on Felger and Maz, and I think most people would agree, except for Chris Gasper, who just wants to continue down this path, just keep doing this thing. Jimmy shakes his head in disgust.
So disappointed in Chris.
Unbelievable. I used to have a lot of respect for Chris until today. I don't know. Really, it's like what Phil Leotardo says about Johnny Sack. My estimation of Christopher L. Gasper as a man just freaking plummeted. Really. My estimation of Christopher L. Gasper as a baseball analyst and a sports taker plummeted as a result of that opinion. But Breslow understands that you can't buy and sell. So I can at least give him a little tip of the cap on that. Say, all right, maybe you do get something. Maybe this will be a little bit different from the Chaim Bloom experience. You cannot buy and sell at the deadline. You must pick a direction. Now, the worst thing you can do outside of buying and selling at the same time is standing pat. You either need to buy or sell, one way or the other. I think he entered this year wanting to sell. Hell, I entered this year wanting to sell. I wanted to trade Kenley Jansen. I wanted to trade Chris Martin. I wanted to trade Nick Pivetta. I wanted to trade Tyler O'Neill. If he had a good year, and he has, you try and, do the old pump and dump there with O'Neill. You trade for him, has a good year at Fenway Park. You acquire something at the deadline. I think that's one of the reasons Breslow got him. I think entering this year, the plan was obvious. We're going to sell at the deadline. We're going to restock, and we're just going to keep kicking the can down the road, which they have done for years and years and years. And the team has surprised them. Sox have completely and totally surprised them. They've surprised me. They've surprised you. And yet now, it's almost like they're treating it as it's a bit of an inconvenience. The winning, the success, the surprise, the human element of it all. Nobody saw this coming. Hand up, I didn't see this coming. How could you see this coming? Yet here it is. You got a young team playing well, putting things together, and instead of saying, you know what, the projections were wrong, our numbers entering the year didn't end up, have not come to fruition at this point. We're better than we thought. The fact that so far Breslow doesn't seem totally willing to pivot away from that is problematic. It's not all about what you think is going to happen. And don't get me wrong, that's what we do here. We do a lot of, I think this will happen. I predict this. I believe this. 3/4 of the time we're wrong. You got to pivot eventually. You got to say, hey, you know what? Hand up, I was wrong. I thought the Red Sox were going to suck. Hand up, I'm wrong. What do we do now? They don't suck. The American League is worse than I thought it was going to be. The Astros are 500. The Rays are below 500. There are only 7 teams in the American League right now with a 500 or better record. As we sit here today, there are 3 teams competing for 2 wildcard spots. We'll see if Houston, figures it out. We'll see if Texas figures it out. The Rangers have completely fallen off this year. I didn't see that coming. I didn't predict it, but you adjust. You move forward. You say, you know what? This team actually is pretty good. Why don't we go out and add? And it doesn't seem that Breslow is there yet. We'll get to more of Bogaerts' comments from Fenway Park today. We'll get into Alex Cora's comments and what it means for the trading deadline. And we do have a couple open lines for you. You can grab them now at 617-779-0985. McCarthy in for Maz on the Baseball Hour.
Sports Hub headlines.
Red Sox and the Padres. With Xander Bogaerts in town, he's not going to play. He's hurt. First pitch 7:10 tonight with Nick Pivetta on the mound. This is an Apple TV game. Keep that in mind. NHL draft.
baseball banter. The Baseball Hour with Tony Maz on the Sports Hub.
I played there so long, and I have a lot of memories, a lot of good ones, also bad ones, tough ones, but I feel like there's been a lot more good than bad, and maybe being able to be on the bench isn't the worst thing, I can probably have more time to reflect on, the stuff that I did while I was here, the people that helped me get to where I am right now. I mean, there's pretty much everyone on that side, that helped me. I'm very appreciative for them and players, coaches, front office. I mean, they were always really nice to me and my family, and I really don't have no hard feelings at all, towards them.
Of course, Xander Bogaerts doesn't have any hard feelings towards the Red Sox, or Sam Kennedy, or ownership, or Hein Bloom, or anybody. Their disrespect of him in the spring of 2022 made him an absurdly wealthy man. Absurdly. They offered him $4.90. He got $11 and $280. It's like, thank you very much. I wanted to stay here. And the second you opened my eyes to the possibilities of going somewhere else, again, we found out tonight, Alex Spear reporting and tweeting out that after meeting with Sam Kennedy following the 2022 season, Bogaerts thought he was coming back. And then he just so happened to test the market, went out there, dipped his toe in it, and wow, he got one hell of a bite from the San Diego Padres. One hell of a bite. Good for him. No hard feelings. He's laughing his way to the bank. Best thing that ever happened to him. He's got 2 World Series. He can go live in San Diego, live his life. Every picture I see from Don Orsillo on Twitter is him like catching a fish or something. Just hanging out, living his best life. He's tan. Probably the best thing that ever happened to Don Orsillo, too. The Red Sox disrespecting him on the way out. It's amazing how many bad decisions this team has made over the years, and this weekend is a reminder of that in the face of a really good year compared to what you were expecting. I mean, not good by what Red Sox standards should be, but compared to what you've gotten in recent years, a fun, young, exciting baseball team, I'm in. You should be in too. The only hope is that the front office and management and the ownership are in, and I don't necessarily know if they are. John's in Maine. How you doing, John?
Hi, how's it going? I want to know about the luxury tax. Are the Sox kind of double dipping? Are they also getting a share of all the money that the other teams pay into the tax if they don't hit the tax?
So the Red Sox, and John Henry hates revenue sharing in baseball, and I actually don't blame him for this. The teams that go into the luxury tax, the big market teams essentially support the teams that don't spend as much money on their teams via revenue sharing in baseball, and Henry hates that. Why wouldn't he?
It just seems that instead of maybe paying $20 million to be in the luxury tax, they could be getting another 30 or 40 or 50 million from the other teams.
So what you're saying is you want the Red Sox to be the Oakland A's and then cash in on the New York Yankees. No, sorry, strong out on that. John Henry is richer than God. The Red Sox should be a luxury tax team. They're not. And you can say there's some strategy as to when you go into the luxury tax in baseball and when you don't. And they've tried to make it a little bit more punitive, but it hasn't really worked. And frankly, the punishments, are nowhere near as bad as they are, say, even in basketball. With all the second apron talk we've been doing when it comes to the Celtics. No, what you're saying is like, what, the Red Sox get 30, 40, 50 million from the Yankees. Yet the reason you're getting that type of money is because you're not spending any money on your team. So you want John Henry to spend less on the Red Sox? That might be one of the strangest calls we've ever gotten. No, I want John Henry to spend less money on the Red Sox. I'm blown away. There's a first time for everything, man. It's a first time for everything. That was one of them. Red Sox right now, $19 million under the luxury tax. They're spending $218 million on this team this year. The first luxury tax threshold. The first one. Not the second, not the third, not the fourth. The first luxury tax threshold, $237 million. So they have space to add. Last year, they spent about $225 on the team. They're spending a little bit less this year. They should, I would imagine, although perhaps not the best assumption I could make, that John Henry would be willing to spend an extra $7 million on his baseball team this year. But they should, theoretically, have room to add. And the question that I think we need to ask ourselves, and we don't have an answer to yet, is how good do the Red Sox have to be for ownership to be willing to commit extra money to the team at the deadline? Milliken, who, if he were here tonight, would be, screaming, from the top of his lungs, would be telling you that Chaim Bloom last year did not have the authority to add payroll at the deadline. He did not. Do the Red Sox have the authority to add payroll at this year's deadline? We don't have the answer to that question.
I would say no.
Based on what you saw last year, that's a fair assumption, Jim.
No, based on Sam Kennedy on the record in spring training was like, yeah, our budget went down. So if your budget went down and you re-signed Rafaela, you re-signed Bayo, you have no money to add money at the deadline.
So last year, I think they spent $225. This year, they're at $218. So if the budget has gone down, did it go down by $7 million? Did it go down by $5 million? Did it go down by $3 million? Do they have room in their budget, which has been set by ownership? Do they have room to add at the deadline? And that
feels like no.
I don't know if we have the answer to that. I mean, listen, Jimmy, it's not an unreasonable expectation. What if they have $3 million to play with? You can still add a good player at $3 million because, again, it's prorated, right? You're only if there's a $6 million a year player who's a guy who can help you. There's a $6 million a year right-handed bat out there. Platoon guy, whatever it is. Well, you're going to pay him less than $3 million at the deadline. Can you find somebody to take Yoshida's contract off your hands? Probably not. But can you attach a good prospect to him and send him to Los Angeles? Send him somewhere. Jimmy's shaking his head back there. The Yoshida
what the F are we doing here? We're the Boston freaking Red Sox, and we're counting pennies?
I agree, Jimmy.
We're counting nickels?
Well,
we're trying to put like a couple quarters together to get a buck?
Yep.
What are we doing here?
That's exactly what we're doing. This is who they are.
What happened?
John Henry stopped caring. That's what happened. He stopped caring. He's maximizing the profit margins with the Red Sox to fund his other ventures. That's what it is. So, I mean, listen, I could do another show on this the same way that I've done the exact same show for the last 3 years, the same way, Jimmy, that we've done the exact same show for years and years and years on this. Or I can talk about, yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. It's not going to change. No matter what I say tonight, that's not going to convince John Henry to start spending more money on his baseball team. So we have to talk within the parameters of that. What if you have $7 million to spend at this trading deadline? The team is probably worth it. What do you need to do to get Yoshida's contract off the books? What do you need to do? What prospect do you need to attach with Yoshida to ship him off anywhere? These are the types of conversations. I get it. It sucks to have, but we need to have it, Jimmy. We need to have it. Masataka Yoshida, $19 million. We started out the program talking about Trevor Story and his awful contract, and he's owed nearly $90 million over the next 3 years. How about Yoshida? 18-6, 18-6, 18-6 for the next 3 years. Guy isn't playing against lefties. They're platooning him. He's a designated hitter. They refuse to put him in the field, and he hasn't hit since like June of last year. Nice job, Chaim Bloom. Boy, people thought Chaim Bloom was cheap and a penny pinch. I mean, he was, don't get me wrong, and that starts with ownership. But the few times he actually spent some money, woof. Holy crap. Masataka Yoshida is an anchor on this team right now. He is an absolute anchor. Somebody even speculated to me, Jimmy, and I won't reveal who it was, but it's somebody who would know. Somebody speculated to me that Yoshida could legitimately be designated for assignment.
Oh, I'd believe that.
I'd believe it too. And you know what? I mean, cut your costs where you can, but would you rather designate Yoshida for assignment, or would you rather attach a prospect? If you could, and I don't know if you can, it might not be realistic. Would you rather designate him for assignment and eat the money, or attach a prospect to ship him out of town and hopefully have somebody take that contract off your hands, or at least a portion of it?
I'd rather try to see if I can find a $15 million pitcher who kind of sucks, but maybe needs an environment change.
It's kind of like what we talk about with the Bruins. You make a hockey trade, right? You make a baseball trade. You take on somebody else's problem, but that problem is maybe a better fit for your problems. I would agree.
Try to get a starting pitcher, try to get a bullpen arm who's making $14-15 million a year for Yoshida to a team that needs hitting.
Let me do some research on that. Let me see if I can find a guy for you. Because this is the type of stuff that Craig Breslow should be doing.
And if that pitcher doesn't work, well, you tried. You cut the pitcher, and you're out the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Maybe lower term.
Right. And it's a pitcher, which a pitcher is way more valuable than a designated hitter who's kind of a slap hitter. And
who wasn't Craig Breslow's idea, apparently. Because I still go back to the fact, Matt, that he hit .290 last year with an OPS just under 800. Like, there should be a place for him in Major League Baseball.
Not in the modern game, which I agree.
Why? Because he's a doubles hitter?
But he hasn't been since June of last year. Like, those numbers, Jimmy, were all at the beginning of the year. He hasn't hit in a year now. And it feels to me like the big leagues have figured him out. Of course, there was the excuse that he couldn't handle the travel, and he broke down and he wore down. Well, he's not playing the field anymore, and he got hurt again this year. So it's a bad signing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The few times Bloom did spend money, Trevor Story and Masataka Yoshida. Wow. That's problematic.
This doesn't help the Red Sox in free agency going forward. They'd rather draft and try these lottery tickets because it costs them no money.
Yep. No, that is more of the analytical mold, for sure. Well, I thought that was an uplifting segment. Did you enjoy that? 617-779-0985.
What do you got to drink over there?
I do have something that I think you'll enjoy. I would characterize a not so great call in that segment. If you're a baseball fan, you've got to listen. You've got to listen to this call about a trade in baseball. Somebody wants a team to make. You don't want to miss this. We'll do it next.
Stay tuned for more of the Baseball Hour on the Sports Hub.
No Maz tonight. You got Matt McCarthy. Sorry about that. No Milliken. He'll be back next week. Maz will not be back next Friday, but Milliken will be. We'll do the Baseball Hour Roundtable with Jimmy Stewart. Although, I don't know, that's the day after the 4th. You in the day after the 4th, Stu?
I am, July 5th.
Excellent. There we go. We'll go full roundtable. It'll be a real nerd fest. Jimmy, how long have you been doing sports talk radio?
I've been enhancing talent since 2000.
Now, by my math, that's 24 years, and you have enhanced a lot of talent. Would you say, in your 24 years, that you would say every sports talk radio caller is excellent, they are knowledgeable, and they always have good opinions, right? Is that a fair assessment?
I would say no.
Would you say the ones who call in with the trade ideas? Trade ideas are always good in sports talk radio when you get them from a caller, right?
I enjoy them because it makes you think, and everybody loves to be a team builder.
Yes, well, I mean, it's the dream, right? The whole Brad Stevens wants to be a coach. Oh, BS, he doesn't want to be a coach. You kidding me? He wants to do the coolest job on planet Earth, which is to build a team. Well, on WFAN in New York, Yankees talk, obviously big down there.
This was unbelievable.
Yankees made a hell of a move, right, this offseason in acquiring Juan Soto because they actually want to win, and shocker, it's worked out for them. They acquired a star player. He's working out. He's a perfect fit for that ballpark in New York. Left-handed hitter. It's fantastic. Apparently, though, there's one Yankee fan who wants Juan Soto traded. Let's give this a listen.
You have to think with Juan Soto, obviously he's.
Wait, who is that?
I'm sorry, is that Luis Soho?
You have to think with Juan Soho, obviously he's not signed till next year. Maybe we trade him.
Yeah.
Right? We trade him for Vlad Guerrero Jr., maybe take back a George Springer contract. He signed for another 4 years. It's a bad contract. He's not good. You take that back in, and then maybe in the offseason we negotiate with Juan Soto.
What in the world are you talking about? You're not going to. You want to trade Juan Soto for Vladimir Guerrero? Are you trying to make the Yankees better or worse?
You trust Juan Soto long term?
Yes, he's 26 years old. I trust him more long term than anybody else. He is so far and away a better player than Vladimir Guerrero. It's not even worth discussing.
It's hard to get a first baseman that hits like Vlad.
No, it's not. It's really not. It's hard to get a 26-year-old generational player who, when he slumps, has a 420 on base percentage. That's what's hard. Do you want to see who makes more money in the open market? I'm sorry, I can't. I'm going to turn it off. I'm serious. I can't do it. No, that can't be the first call of the show. The first call of the show can't be trade Juan Soto. The guy's got to be messing with me. I'm going to calm down because he can't be real. That can't be real. That's totally just designed to piss me off. And it worked. Trading Juan Soto for Vladimir Guerrero and George Springer is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I just got so much sports talk radio PTSD there. Like, there's nothing worse than, like, Jimmy, the hardest segment of any show is the first segment, right? You got to get going. Like, once you get in the swing of things, it's fine. It's like riding a bike, all that. Doesn't matter. First segment, always the hardest. And when you go to that first call and it sucks.
You have to think with Juan Soho, obviously he's not signed till next year. Maybe we trade him.
Juan Soho, no relation to Luis Soho, who was a Red Sox killer back in the 90s and early 2000s. Low ball, too. God, I hated Luis Soho. He just, Luis Soho, and then he was gone, thank God, and they brought in Enrique Wilson, who killed the Red Sox and was the Pedro killer. You remember that, Enrique Wilson? Oh, man.
So Juan Soto or Vlad Guerrero and Springer.
You have to think with Juan Soto.
No, you really don't. Actually, my mind shut down there. It's impossible for me to think anymore. Now, again, am I above a good trade conversation? Did I spend half of last night's program making the argument for the Red Sox to trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Yes,
it's a good argument.
I think I made a very good argument. I think my argument of trading Marcelo Meyer for Vlad Guerrero Jr. was slightly better than the trade Juan Soto for Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think that's particularly for a team that's trying to win a World Series. I'd like the Red Sox to get serious about trying to win a World Series. As I said last night, you got three big prospects. They're all left-handed hitters. Marcelo Meyer right now is blocked by Trevor Story. Need we not forget? 3 years, $90 million remaining on that contract.
Maybe the caller was onto something, though, with needing a first baseman, because Aaron Judge was taking ground balls at first base today.
He was?
So you need two outfielders now.
That's intriguing. Big, tall guy. It's worked out well for the Phillies in putting Harper there. That'll keep him healthier, too. One would think, instead of playing center field. I'm going to nerd out about that. Jimmy, now I'm going to think about that all weekend long. I'm going to go home. I'm just going to think about what it's like to play first base. And it's all about really the cuts. It's about being an athlete, right? I mean, if Kyle Schwarber can do it, anybody can do it.
Even
right?
though Vlad Guerrero